Hey guys, and welcome back to Altcoin Buzz Spotlight with me, Leah Heilpen, the show where we speak to entrepreneurs, innovators, and thought leaders in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. Joining me today is Erick de Moura, the founder and CEO of Cartesi, the company aiming to make decentralized applications scalable, cost-effective, and well, just easier. But before we jump in, don't forget, if you like this segment, then hit the like button and let us know in the comment section below who you want us to interview next and which topics you want us to cover. Erick, welcome to Altcoin Buzz Spotlight. How are you doing today?
Great, Leah. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's really good to have you. I do want to jump straight in because you have quite an interesting project that I just want to learn a lot more about. So for those that don't know, tell us a little bit more about Cartesi.
So Cartesi is a blockchain tech project that started in 2018. We have been building layer 2 technology for blockchains, meaning that we're trying to make the lives of developers easier and allowing them also to make more powerful applications on top of blockchains like Ethereum and other layer 1 platforms that support smart contracts.
And one of the key aspects of this that you guys are actually quite proud of is the fact that you have the integration with the Linux environment. So for those that aren't super techie like myself, explain to me, what does this mean and why is it a good thing?
Right. So let me explain a little bit more what Cartesi is doing. Basically, we all know that the blockchains suffer from a scalability problem. They can't process too much information. They can't store too much data. People have to pay probably high fees to use the blockchain. You can see what's going on with Ethereum nowadays. So this problem is very well known, right? And there is another major problem for the adoption of blockchains, which is not so much a focus, but is hindering the adoption, which is the fact that developers, they don't have the tools that normally software programmers, developers, they use on mainstream, right? If people want to develop their, let's say, mobile applications or desktop application, or web applications, they have at their disposal real operating systems like Linux, like Windows, Mac OS, and Android and others, right? And when people go to blockchains, they don't have any of this to build their software. They have to use tools that are nascent, that are very new and oftentimes immature. They have to learn new languages, and worse of all, they don't have a very mature ecosystem of components that people on the other side, on mainstream, have. So applications and software that exists on top of Linux have been evolving for more than 30 years now. So when people create their applications, they have lots of components and software stacks that they use as Lego building blocks to create their powerful applications. And on blockchains, people don't have that. So for instance, if you want to open a file on Ethereum, that's even a crazy concept because the concept of file doesn't even exist on blockchains. If you want to do very simple operations that developers are used to using these components, they find themselves very limited. So what we're trying to do here is to not only solve the well-known problem of scalability, but also bring a real Linux OS that would be the basis for people to create smart contracts, right? So instead of people now developing their smart contracts on Solidity using very limited environment, they will count on very rich environments that evolved for 30 years, where they find very mature software, several thousands and thousands of open source libraries and components and services that people can use to build much more powerful smart contracts, DeFi, decentralized games, and so on and so forth. So why we bring Linux? That's the reason why. We want to bridge the gap between the experience of developing for blockchain and the experience of developing on mainstream. And by doing this, we'll open the gates for thousands of developers that are even intimidated to start to develop for blockchain because they have to learn new concepts, they have to learn a new language, and it's very limiting to use these tools that exist today.
And just to go back a little bit, you are, as you mentioned, a layer 2 solution. There's a huge focus, obviously, on scalability. But you have two types of infrastructure. So you have on-chain and off-chain. So how does that work in sync? Are there any trade-offs?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? If you look at any layer 2 solution, meaning that it is an infrastructure that sits on top of a blockchain, right? So it's not a blockchain itself. It is between the blockchain and the applications people will develop on it. So all layer 2 solutions, they involve on-chain and off-chain components. So the whole idea is that resources on-chain are very expensive, like storing data, like doing computation, and they have to be used with parsimony. So the off-chain components do all the heavy lifting, while the on-chain components make sure that we don't lose the great properties that blockchains provide, like decentralization, trustlessness, security, and so on. So that's basically what we do. The off-chain components do the heavy lifting. You can process large amounts of data that would be hard to do on-chain. You can use a lot of processing resources that Ethereum and other blockchains wouldn't even be close to allowing this amount of processing and so on. Now, in terms of trade-offs, that's a very interesting question and not so simple to answer very quickly, but every layer 2 solution has a few trade-offs that have to be considered, right? So, for instance, there are solutions that implement Plasma, others implement sidechains, others implement state channels, and now there are the roll-up solutions. Cartesi is developing a roll-ups solution, which is a very interesting solution, and even the Ethereum Foundation has been putting a lot of emphasis on the roll-ups approach, because it's more secure, it guarantees data availability, data is stored more cheaply on chain, but it's there. So it avoids lots of security issues that you would find on other designs like Plasma. So Cartesi is, let's say, in this class of roll-up solutions, we are implementing our own variants of optimistic roll-ups. And in the realm of roll-ups, by the way, we have other subcategories of different kinds of implementations of roll-ups, each of these with different pros and cons.
So you have kind of touched on my next question, but let's just delve further into it. So scalability is obviously a really huge topic. There are a lot of platforms out there trying to solve this, a lot of layer 2 solutions like yourself. So who would you say some of your main competitors are, and how are you guys better and how are you guys different?
Well, let's say we could say in a broad sense that we could be competing with any other layer 2 solution, even the ones that are implementing sidechains, Plasma, state channels, because we're all trying to scale whatever is going on layer 1, right? But let's say inside of roll-ups, which is this specific realm that we were discussing before, you have projects like Arbitrum, like ZK Sync, and Cairo and others that are implementing different forms of optimistic roll-ups. And you could say that we are, working in the same fields, and we might be categorized as competitors. Although certain implementations of roll-ups would be better for certain kinds of applications, other implementations would be better for others. But the important thing to emphasize here is that because we're bringing this Linux environment for smart contracts, because we have this specific implementation of a virtual machine that supports a real operating system, that separates us from any other solution. We are the only blockchain tech infrastructure project that is bringing a real OS for people to develop. So In the scalability realm, you could say that we are competing with a few other roll-up solutions. But when it comes to programmability, the ability people will have to create smart contracts, we are bringing some advantage that it's quite unique to what Cartesi is doing.
All right, well, thank you for clearing that one up. I do want to move on a little bit and talk about mass adoption, because user experience is something huge right now. I think it's what a lot of projects are trying to improve, especially in this current bull market as we bring more people into the space. So what would you say, in your opinion, some of the biggest hurdles are to mass adoption, and how are you guys actually tackling that?
Well, in essence, our project is going directly toward the heart of the adoption problem. Right? Because not only the scalability issue is a barrier, but the tools that are very difficult to use, the limitations of programmability are, let's say, a huge barrier for this mass adoption we're talking about. So by bringing an OS and mainstream software components for people, it's going to be much easier for developers that are not used to blockchains to just start their career developing decentralized applications. Now, of course, we are talking on the technical side of things in terms of how we are going to leverage and bootstrap this adoption. There are lots of things that we are doing. In terms of partnerships with other projects. So recently we partnered with Elrond, and Avalanche is also going to integrate with us. And we are going to be helping their communities to onboard Cartesi's technology. We are promoting grant programs. We are now just running our dApp incubation program on a partnership with Gitcoin, and other programs will come later. So there are lots of things that we're going to be doing along the way that will incentivize developers to come and people to learn and spread the news about our tech.
So we're talking a lot about decentralized applications, but let's actually get to it. What kind of dApps are you building on Cartesi, and what do you have in the pipeline?
The very first dApp that we created on Cartesi was a tower defense game called Crypts. When we went to Binance Launchpad last year, I can say that people loved it. It was quite addictive, and people were playing a lot. That was very interesting because that application showcased how people can leverage a level of computation that would be impossible to run on Ethereum. And yet we proved that concept back then last year. So that was our first application. Now, there are 3 incubated projects from the incubation program I was talking about that are implementing products using Cartesi stack. One of the companies, Creel. It is a carbon credit IoT company that is using Cartesi on ARM devices that collect information from buildings and try to be carbon neutral. And by using Cartesi, they make sure that information is collected and processed in a verifiable and secure way and placed safely on chain. So that's a very interesting application for IoT. Another project called Sync Thunder also used Cartesi to create a marketplace for NFTs. They are in the fields of sim racing, like simulators of racing cars, and they have to buy and sell virtual car parts and configurations, and they have created a marketplace, decentralized one, using Cartesi stack. So it's another very interesting usage of what we have so far. And then finally, another project that's actually helping us to make Cartesi more accessible to developers, working more on the infrastructure side, which is Cartesi, which is developing a package manager for our tech and so on and so forth. So only to wrap it up, now we are working on a decentralized poker game. Very soon we're going to release more news about it.
That sounds exciting. But you also have your very own token, CTSI. So talk to me about the utility of it and where does its value come from?
Right. So the most important value of CTSI is to be the crypto fuel for Nother, which is our side chain that's being developed on top of Ethereum. So just like ETH would be used on Ethereum for people to insert transactions in blocks and miners be rewarded, the same principle will apply to our sidechain that run on top of Ethereum. So CTSI is used for users to place data on the sidechain, and miners are rewarded, validators are rewarded for creating these blocks, right? So these are one of the utilities. The other one is more related to our rollups product that we are building. We are going to be creating a marketplace for validator nodes, and meaning that developers will be able to participate on an open market and pay for validators to provide their services or of providing computation and verifying computation for the rollup system. So those are the two major utilities of the token.
And which exchanges are you actually available on right now? So also which countries are you available in?
So right now, let's say we are on Binance. We've been on Binance since April 2020. We are in Korea on Coin1 and Upbit. In India, we are on WazirX. We are also on Gate.io. And you can also find Cartesi pairs on decentralized exchanges like Uniswap, 1inch, and so on.
So it sounds like there's a lot of reputable exchanges there, including Binance. So that's really awesome to hear. Now, you also have funding from some prominent investors. So tell me about this.
Yeah, our very first investor was Serguei Popov, one of the founders of IOTA, which is an academic colleague of one of our founders, Augusto. He was our first investor in the project. Then SOSV came later on with Artesian Capital. Later on, we had SNZ Capital and LD Capital also joining. And then, after that, we went to Binance Launchpad.
So after all of this, give us, what is the 5 to 10 year roadmap?
It's a very interesting question because we know a lot about what we need to do. For instance, we need to achieve maturity with this rollups implementation. We need to make it as usable and convenient for developers as we can. There is a lot of work to be done in terms of making this very easy for developers to do in the next years. We are partnering with several blockchain layer 1 projects, and there's lots of integrations we'll be doing with these chains. But it's important to say that this blockchain space is very, very new, right? And things are changing drastically and very fast. So we are essentially an enthusiastic research team. We are always researching new stuff. We are working on new research that we're going to be talking more about it soon. It's just a little bit too early to talk about these things, but our objective is to be ahead of the curve in terms of technological progress and try to look at least one step ahead and be always very useful for the community of developers that want to create the next generation of decentralized systems.
Well, Eric, we'll definitely have to have you back on then to hear more about that. But I want to wish you the best of luck with the next few months. And thank you so much for coming on Altcoin Buzz.
Thank you very much, Leia. Have a good one.